Welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Joey Galvez, and I'm here with my pal Benjamin Morse, and we're gonna welcome to the show CJ Hudson. Come on in and let's talk to you about your Kickstarter. You're definitely gonna be here to explain yourself, man. You got a lot of explaining to do. Talk to us, man.
Yeah, I know. It's probably weird. We were just talking about this kind of before we were starting about like my Kickstarter because I feel like it's weird and that I was really concerned about it, but it's been doing really well. Like it's not quite erotica, it's not quite Western comics. It's in this weird fairy tale realm. I'm adapting a fairy tale from an old Japanese fairy tale, but it's not a true adaptation. It's like taking elements from it and just modernizing it a little bit. So there's a lot of stuff going on that I was like, I really want to do something different and try something different. And also my buddy Moy wanted to do like a manga influence title. And so that's kind of where it all started. Like that's kind of how the wheels got going.
So tell us the name and the quick log line of the story.
Yeah. So a tiny island over the kingdom under the sea. We're calling it Tiny Island for short, just so you don't always have to say that long title. But yeah, and basically it's a sort of a fairy tale. Westernized version of an old Japanese fairy tale with when basically a young girl follows a turtle under the sea and discovers three possible futures of her life should she decide to live under the sea.
Yeah, very cool story when I heard about this. Very interesting to see that you're kind of bringing the manga style and the kind of storytelling of that world to this comic space. I know you've kind of been doing some stuff in the direct market. So how is that different from your direct market stuff?
Yeah, I when Moy and I started doing this together, I didn't really know where I wanted to put it at first. At first, I envisioned that I would probably go with like Antarctic Press, who's very manga heavy. They have a lot of manga stuff. I've worked with them a lot in the past. But then I was like, the direct market is a little dry right now. It's hard to actually make a lot or anything back off of your comics, and so I was like, I need to take a cue from what other people are doing, and if I'm going to do direct market, I need to do Kickstarter first, and I need to try to make a go of it that way to expand my fan base. And I'm definitely not against the direct market in any way. I love it. Like there's still plenty of stuff that I'm going to be pushing out there, but for some things I feel like I need to go Kickstarter first, and I'll make the direct market experience something totally different. And I felt like this was weird enough that it would be better to go Kickstarter first, and try, for me, who's fairly newer to comics but absolutely new to Kickstarter. It felt like a good first attempt. On my own, I've done some stuff with Epic Fantasy, my buddy Devin Arscott before. We've successfully funded a few things, but yeah, just really wanted to try something different before I went to the direct market again.
I think that's the smartest. It depends. At least I'd say, like at the space we're all at, which is where we've never worked for the big two or any of the adjacent. I mean, I worked for Dynamite a little bit, but I don't think anyone remembers or noticed that.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it was a long time. I'm not terribly proud of it. It wasn't the best stuff I've ever done, but yeah, it was.
It still counts.
Yeah, sure. I'll take it. I was only qualifying it. But my point is, a lot of the people that are kind of where we're at, the level we're at, you've got your fan base you've built online through your Kickstarters and your online presence, but it's not necessarily something that translates into the direct market. And I think that's at that level, at least right now, for me, I'm a huge proponent of the model of like, you got to crowdfund this stuff to at least fund the artwork, get your artists paid, make a little bit of money. And I think that also, I know that I've heard about a little bit of hostility from some retailers, like, well, I don't like that this is, kind of been available online first. At the same time, like, retailers are just not if it's a new book, if it's from a small publisher, I mean, there are retailers that do not even look past Marvel and DC in their
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
and
And,
sometimes
and and unfortunately, a lot of direct market publishers do the same thing, right? It's really difficult to get a book from Kickstarter space to direct market. Now, yes, it's happened, and yes, it's still happening. And there are some people who publishers out there who are doing it, right? And we all know that, but for the most part, right, it's still very difficult to get a book to go there. And I think it's kind of weird because you can take these numbers still and
Mhm.
use them to boost the kind of the proposals that you would use to get your book to kind of be pitched to in direct market. Like, I don't
Oh
understand why
yeah,
it's so
no,
far removed from each other.
no, I completely agree. It's like you really don't have any other way to show that your idea and your book kind of has some momentum. It sort of has the sauce.
If anything,
That's
this
really
is like
a good
quick
indicator of that.
marketing. If
Yeah,
it's
we're
if anything,
switching
it's
around our
marketing.
format here.
Right, right. I know, right? We're all talking, but it's basically market testing this thing, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
100%.
let's get into the campaign and look at it, and then we'll talk a little bit
Yeah,
more about that stuff because we usually get into the marketing and all that kind of stuff in the second half of the show.
sure.
So
Let's
let's
do it.
look
Yeah.
through the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, cover. I mean, I really liked. There's no shortage of really good images on this campaign. So I think for Joey, obviously who built this, it was kind of a question of, okay, what do I go with? We did the cover by Yuko to start, which I think was really captivating. But once we got the Romboli cover, Joey, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that kind of sealed the deal on like what is gonna catch everybody's attention.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of encapsulated the whole feeling of the entire story and exactly what the tale that is being told, right? I mean, most of these a real like handful of these covers actually kind of do that, right? Because like the Marco cover obviously does that around the front and stuff like that, but that I think that one really just kind of pulled you in, and obviously, I mean, you can't pass up a gorgeous woman on a cover, so.
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? So, yeah, and we started off with I think it's a funny story to say that, Joey really brought me back to reality because I don't know what I don't know. Pretty new to the whole scene, and I got a ton of covers because I there was a ton of artists that I really wanted to work with, and I was like, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to work with them again, and I see them on this project. I don't know if I'm going to be able to work with Angela Wu again in the immediate on a project that's as perfect as this is for her, or anybody else. So, or Yuko, anybody else. And I was like, I'm just going to keep going. And then one led to another and another and another. Obviously, I had all these ready to release, and Joey's like, you got to pick 4 to start, like 4 or 5 to start, because you're going to release way too many. And that's a bad
Tell the
strat.
truth. I said I 2 or 3 are probably good, but if you're gonna go extra and like do, you got to remember you're gonna go to print 4 different times with these covers, right? Or as many covers you got to do at least the minimum for all these different covers. So you got to go to print each of those times with those different art.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it was well stated, and I was like, and I didn't even think about that, right? So, for me, I'm just like thinking, oh my God, more amazing art. This is incredible. Like, well, we'll have 1,000 covers. This is great. They do this all the time in the direct market, and forgetting that I, have to do all the fulfillment and everything, and there's a cost and all that stuff. So that's another plug for Geek Collective and Joey for bringing creators back to reality if you're new with Kickstarters. And more isn't always better.
yeah, it's definitely a learning curve too, right? Because you like and you could do it right strategically, doing these things. You could pay for art, right? But you don't necessarily have to use that art on a cover, right? You can use it for the
Mhm.
campaign, and
Yeah,
then if you want to, if you really have your heart set on using it as a cover, it doesn't have to be for this campaign, right? Especially if, I mean, you're just getting the artwork and it fits the book, right? You can always go back and do a specialty cover campaign or a specialty kind of hardback cover or something like that, or and use all this different artwork that you've already paid for and that you're holding on, And so it's like it's great that you can pay for these different things and then kind of stack them up and keep them in your back pocket. Sometimes you don't need to always release them, right? And yes, it's really hard for these creators to be like, oh man, I did a cover for that, or I did some art for that and I didn't see it come out. So it's one of these things, right, that we balance as creator and as running this as a business as well, right? So you have to kind of put different hats on when you're thinking of those things. So how do you shift from doing things like that? Because you have done lots of you've done a anthology where you have tons of creators that you're working with, and that's obviously many different personalities and people that need to get paid their things. So how have you dealt with let's say the creators fun personalities, or how do you handle those different hats?
Yeah, you mean like working with these artists
Working with
on
multiple artists, how do you go from the administrative hat to the creator hat where you just want to get everybody on a project?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I try to be really hands off with, so like, well, like the Angela Wu cover, for instance. Like, Angela came up with that whole design. I was like, here's the theme. It's aquatic, it's fantasy, it's tropical. What do you think? Here's what I have so far. I already had some covers, and she was like, I have this really interesting idea. Say no if you want to. Everything's collaborative, but I'd love to do kind of a homage to an old 80s anime type, promo cover thing. And that's the vibe I'm going for. And I was like, oh, that's fucking awesome. That sounds really cool. And she sent me some layouts and some things off Pinterest. Like, here's kind of the vibe I'm going with. And I view everything as really collaborative, and try to really work with the artists or other creators, even if it's me curating an anthology and being like, do what you think is best. And I can help provide some guidance, or I'll let you know if I don't think it's good, but I want to provide you with a lot of creative freedom on these things. Oftentimes I'll go into covers and I don't even really know what I want. I just have the theme and the idea, this kind of a basic idea, and I'll just let the artist run with it. Some artists hate that. Some artists love it because they can do whatever they want. The best artists, I think, like Rio Burton, is really good at this. She'll send you like 3 little sketches of ideas, and then you can kind of choose which one you like and then kind of go from there and make any edits to it. I love that because sometimes me as a writer, I don't know what I want. Like, I just know that I want to work with Rio Burton or somebody like that, right? So it can be challenging. And I also don't want to redo what I've already done before. Like, maybe I'm looking for something new. So yeah, I mean, my approach is always really collaborative. I'm never like, it has to be this. It absolutely has to be the chick coming out of the water in this way, and this is the pose. I think you get more out of it if you view it as more of a
Yeah.
partnership.
I think so.
Ben,
That's
you and I were talking about that just before the show, talking about artistic freedom and giving the artist a little bit more room to kind of breathe a little bit there.
Yeah, that's not just an issue of creativity all the time. So I think it's also, in a lot of ways, a logistical issue. Is probably the best way I can think of to describe it. There's not just what you're excited about doing, what you're passionate about doing. That's certainly a big part of it. There's also really specific problems you have to solve on a page. If it's an interior page, certainly where you have story going on, that's doubly true because you've got word balloons and speaking order to worry about. On the cover, it's true in the sense that you really need to find ways to do things that have impact and really set it apart from other things. I really love the Woo cover. I love the design of it. The illustration's great. It really works. That one just leaps off the page to me.
Yeah.
But probably also because I'm a designer and I really like to see stuff like that. The thing I'm really getting at, though, as far as the collaborative process goes, is I think you need to people kind of focus on the creative aspect and I think it's important. Like, yeah, you want to have stuff as an artist you're excited about doing, or like that you can get into and you're like, yeah, this is perfect for kind of what I do. You definitely want to play to that, and I think that's more of a creative issue. The other part of it is a little bit more logistical in terms of, like, as a cover image, you really need to have a kind of a banger image. It's got to be cool. It's got to leap off the page. Sometimes you get concepts from a writer that are not to knock on writers, but I guess that means I'm going to do it. You have ideas that sound good, but they don't necessarily visually translate, or they don't necessarily they would work as a visual, as a standalone visual, but maybe they wouldn't work with something that has to contend with trade dress or some of the other mechanical issues that go into things. So I think when you can find ways to set up a process where your artist can kind of worm into something that works for you. I would almost throw that sort of 3 sketch thing back at the writers and say, it would be cool if you had like 3 or 4 ideas that you think would make good visuals that an artist could kind of say, okay, yeah, I think this. And if we kind of brought in, knowing like what your logo is, because a lot of people have different trade dress, and the logos are different dimensions, that you kind of have to work with that. And you really need to sort of think of those things from the ground up, or you're going to have problems down the line. It's going to be
the more the merrier, right? The more the merrier. I feel like especially the more collaborative on either side that you are with your team. I think that's the best, right? And you kind of fall into that place, right? Let's continue looking through this, and this is an NSFW campaign that there will be no nudity shown, but it is a NSFW book, so you'll see some topless images within the book when you do purchase this. So just let you guys know that. Tell us a little bit about the interiors.
Yes, this is my buddy Moy Marco, and Moy and I met because he actually became the new regular artist for my series Interstellar Dust from Antarctic Press. Igor Wolski, the original artist, had to drop out after issue 5, and so then Moy came on and finished the rest of the 3 issues for the second volume, and he knocked it out of the park, and we became buddies. And he was like, I really want to do a manga, and I'd like you to script it. Can you do something for me so I can showcase my manga art style? And I was like, yeah, I got this idea that I've been kicking around. I already have a concept like cover basically that I got from Yuko years ago, so that was sort of the original idea that I had. And I was like, I'll just build a story around this. I already kind of know what I want to do. I want to adapt this fairy tale. And Moy knocked it out of the park. This is very much his, he's a Spanish artist, but he really likes playing with different styles. So and he's very talented. Obviously, if you look at Interstellar Dust, you'll see the interiors to Interstellar Dust. You can tell it's Moy, but it's definitely different. He's playing up the manga style in here quite a bit.
And that's so hard to do, to switch styles there. You can tell us a little bit more about how difficult that is, and would be to go back and forth between styles.
No, I agree. It is hard. I think that people focus on the wrong things about that when you look at switching styles. When it comes to the rendering, that's actually not too difficult. You kind of can approach things like, if you look at this artwork and if you're going in the manga style, you don't generally see a lot of shading, and there's exceptions to this, obviously, but you generally are almost approaching it like a cartoon in a way. You're not doing any line work shading in a big way. You're going to leave that to your color. That kind of thing is easy to approach if you have a good plan going in. I think what really becomes difficult, and he's doing a great job of, obviously, is to figure out ways to really incorporate not just the layouts, which is to say the panel setup and all those things, which this is certainly leaning more towards manga, but also the sort of shots you emphasize. In Western comics, this is not necessarily the big panel on the page, but in a lot of manga it is. So it's kind of a storytelling approach that has to change up, and not necessarily always rendering or things like that, because you can really look at other examples and say, yeah, I kind of want to do this. And if you keep that in mind and you're pretty consistent with it, that becomes pretty easy. And that's mostly a rendering issue where you're sort of saying, what am I going to handle with coloring? What am I going to handle with line art? That's not too bad, but the approach and what you lay out, what you emphasize, that becomes something you really have to think about. And I don't know, CJ, maybe you can tell us, how much of that do you have input on as the writer? Do you say, like, is this the big panel? Is the sound effect big on the page, which you see in a lot of manga? Do you really chime in with that stuff?
Again, pretty collaborative. Typically, when my scripts, I'll note if I think it needs to be the biggest panel of the page. If I don't see that and I don't really see the layout completely in my mind, I'll leave it to Moy to mess with. But sometimes I have an idea of how the layout should look, and I'll provide kind of like a little reference, and I'll draw it out for the artist and say, here's kind of what I see, just so you know what I'm talking about, and just do kind of a rough sketch. But I always say, take it or leave it. Like, you might have a better idea, but sometimes visually is better. I think, like, even outside of script, just so people can see what you're getting at. Like, I had a script recently where I had all these little like references to this guy sort of like tilting his head and moving in different directions and looking around. Was because the secret agent was like trying to read body language a little bit, and I was like, okay, I really want to get that across on the script. Little sometimes there can be a language barrier too, so I was like, I'm just gonna draw it. So I drew all these little panels, and I kind of showed, just for a quick reference, what I meant. But like something like this, I probably said, biggest panel of the page, Emmy's under the water, you see all this aquatic sea life and yada yada. But Moy indicated, I don't remember drawing this one, he placed these panels in their specific location.
Well, as an artist, I always appreciate that. And then obviously, you don't want to be like, say, you have to do this exactly, and then they're doing layouts. But when you do that as a writer, you're kind of showing an artist like, hey, I've kind of thought this through, because I've gotten so many scripts, and this is actually more true of storyboards for commercials and things than it has been of comics, but there's been a little of both. That like you'll have 3 different actions being described on one frame or one panel, and it's like that's obviously not going to work unless it's a script about the Flash and he's doing all 3 of those things at once. That's just not comic storytelling or still frame storytelling. And when you do that as a writer, you're kind of saying, okay, I did think about this, and you're really communicating what you want to see, and then giving your artist a space to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think I've written a lot of comic scripts, and I've had a decent amount published, and I think I don't think I've ever asked for a writer to, or excuse me, an artist to change any of the art in anything. I always say this too, that if I give you 5 panels, but you think it's better to do it in 4 or 6 or 7, I'll make the dialogue work. I'll fix my part, because comics is a visual medium, and I can always go in and change the dialogue around and make it work with what you provide. I want us to collaborate on this. So if you're looking at this going, shit, CJ gave me 7 panels, I really feel like 4 is better for this page for whatever reason, I'm going to do that, and give it to me, and I'll make it work. It's still the same story. We've just adapted it.
Yeah, that's something I do as an artist. Like,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I mean, I always, just to follow up on that, like, I always will kind of tell people like, hey, I think this could need, let's split this into 2 panels, or let's combine these. But generally, as long as you get, I think as an artist, you should always make sure that if you're going to make changes, you're not deleting any information that they gave you. You're getting it all there, but in a different way.
Yeah, 100%. And I've never run into any issues with that. The artists, I always tell them ahead of time, like, just so, like, if everything's important, and or if anything that's important is missing, I'll tell you, but I'm pretty sure you can just adapt these as you feel necessary. When you start talking about like merging pages together, that's when it would get a little dicey, I think. Like if we're like, oh, I'm going to merge 6 and 7 together, that could be tough. But ultimately, I haven't had any problems with the artist playing around, and me just fixing my script a little bit, cutting dialogue, adding dialogue. Ultimately, I feel like it's always been stronger. I've never looked at it and been like, shit, I really wish that, Moy had done 4 panels instead of 5. I've never had that. I've always felt like, this is better. I like this. Like he focused in on this little thing, or he decided to do 2 action shots instead of 1. Like, I don't know. That's just me. Maybe some people are more like fixated on, no, it has to be my script, and they view it more as like work for hire. I'm hiring you to do it. I don't. And that's not me being like, oh, I'm better than anybody. I just view it as a collaborative effort.
And just to kind of loop back to the story a little bit, because we're kind of getting into a lot of the sort of creative mechanical issues of this. You kind of gave us the log line of this, where she has to decide whether to live in the surface or the water, kind of a reverse Little Mermaid. Tell us kind of the story beats or the types of stuff we're going to see from this.
Yeah, so I mean, each door, I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think it's all about accepting change and overcoming fear, like being stuck someplace and then wanting to adapt, but then realizing that maybe the choices that you're given outside aren't necessarily better, and maybe you need to just change what you have available to you in the real. Like, so she has these fantastical visions of something, but they all don't really work out for her. So what you're going to see is all these different choices that Emmy has when she opens these different doors, but none of them quite work out the way that she wants to. Now, obviously, she could stay and accept these different futures, but all of them have consequences and things that might not lead to a better reality for her than what she's facing on the surface world.
Cool, cool. And just to kind of go back to some basics, how long is this book?
32 pages, full color.
Cool, cool.
Very
And
cool.
written in a very different style too. I should say that I wrote this really as sort of a mix of prose and comics. So it's a lot of describing what's happening in the panel. There's under the sea, there's really not any dialogue. Above ground there is, but under the sea, I decided, I was like, I'm going to make this kind of like a fairy tale. I'm just going to add some prose in here. I
It feels like
actually,
it. Mhm.
what's that?
It feels very much like a fairy tale, and I think it does a really good job, because I was able to read this whole thing in its entirety as I was working with the campaign. And I gotta say this, I'm not a manga reader, but this was definitely kind of a dip my toe into the world a little bit. And yes, maybe there's manga fans out there saying like not at all, but come
Yeah.
on, guys. If this is gonna get me to dip my toe into there a little bit, this is something that I would suggest. Um, because it still gives you that feel of American style kind of comics, and then it gives you the art style of like a manga stuff. So, and it's beautifully colored. And the story that kind of tells you, it's really awesome. And then the different scenarios of futures and things of that nature that are within this very much feels like a story. And then when you get to the end, you're just like, okay, cool. It makes me feel like, at the end of Little Mermaid, when you're just like, I want more. Like, come on, I'm invested in this story and into these people. Now I want to know more of what's going on now. So let's
Equal.
take
Might have to do it, Joey.
yeah,
Return to the deep.
right. Let's take a little break. And then when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit about marketing and all that good stuff. Ben, can you please play that Band of Bards video for me, please? Thank you guys for watching the show. That is a really cool trailer there for Band of Bards. Um, Band of Bards is now a co-op, guys, and that means it's going to be a new era of storytelling. They are partnering with Dauntless Stories to put out some really amazing things, tons of stuff. CJ's part of that initiative and some of his work and things of that nature. So make sure you guys are checking out everything that has to do with Band of Bards and Dauntless Stories. Check them out. Lots and lots of new titles coming out, new stories, new initiatives, new marketing plans, all kinds of really fun things. Keep your eyes out on Band of Bards and Dauntless Stories in the direct market and on Kickstarter. So CJ, talking a little bit about that, talking a little bit about marketing and stuff. You do have some stuff in the direct market, um, but this is what your second campaign alone. Now you've done partnered with some other people, kind of dipped your toe into it. You dip your toe into some of the anthology space. So talk to me a little bit about how you put these things together, how you market all these different stories, because now they've some of them have become like a really cool franchise, like your stuff with Devin, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think marketing is really tough in both instances, whether it's the direct market or Kickstarter. So, I mean, with Kickstarter, I think marketing, you kind of have to have some help with it, especially when you're starting out. I think I learned pretty quickly when I had a couple of campaigns that just kind of limped across the finish line. Like we funded, but they weren't bangers, right? Like we weren't like woo, like we're sitting here. You know, I still have 10 days left, and we might be able to hit 200% of goal. It's feasible. We might be able to do it. The other ones, like we got there, but there was really subpar marketing on our part and subpar graphics, just not really getting the word of mouth out necessary that we needed to highlight our content. And I kind of learned from those and said, you know, it doesn't matter if you have cool comics if nobody's looking at your Kickstarter, for instance. I'll kind of talk about Kickstarter first. Like, that you really have to take everything into account. Like you can have this great looking comic with all these images, but if the page looks like shit, and Devin's and my last page did when we launched, it became pretty apparent that it just wasn't meeting the standards that some consumers want, right? So we went back in and we fixed things. We got new graphics in there, hired Joey to come in and do kind of a, I don't know what you called that, like a flash marketing campaign last time, Joey, when you came in for
Right.
the epic 3-in-1, where it
Yeah.
was kind of like, you know, we hired him to try to save the campaign in the
Mhm.
last, like, I don't know, 15 days of it. And he did a little work, and you know, everybody rallied when we got behind it. But it was a lesson to me that you have to take marketing seriously, and that you need to have your page look good, and you need promotional materials to get word of mouth out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just like me and Ben were talking about it a while ago, where like you can't just like you can't just go on to Kickstarter and be like and be a backer, be like, "Ooh, I love this. I'm gonna jump." I mean, you can, right? It's that's how we all started, but and jump in there and be like, "Ooh, I like this. I'm gonna start a campaign. I'm gonna do one now," right? And that's fun and everything, but you gotta think these things out, right? All this stuff costs money. You have to make sure that you have a budget to pay all these people to create this thing that you're thinking about, right? You have to now pay do the minimums, even if you're not going to make everything, like if your minimum is $100 or whatever, let's say, or 50. Sometimes people have the less, but 50 is a good one. Let's say 50, and you don't have 50 people buying that book, that one issue. You still have to do, if you have two or more covers, you still got to do the 50 minimum for those. Even if you got like five people doing one cover, you still got to do the minimums. So you got to think about things like that. You got to think about the packaging, how you're going to send it, because you can't just throw it in a box because the mailman's always going to smash it up. So you got to think ahead of how your people are going to receive it now, right? So it's so much work that gets to put into this stuff. And if you're just jumping into this and you're not willing to kind of learn how to do those things and understand kind of those things, yeah, you might need a little bit of help, right? And it's not necessarily that you don't learn from these things, right? Because the thing that me and Ben like to do, we like to teach people this stuff, you know what I mean? Because it's you can always do these things and learn from one another, and kind of different, like everything that I've learned was from someone else, right? So um Ben, you can speak a little bit more onto the marketing side of things and having an actual marketing plan, because he's part of he's been in marketing for about for a good amount of time, so he's a marketing vet. So talk a little bit more about how what it goes into actually creating a plan for something like this, Ben.
I like how you pause. He's like, he's been in marketing for a while now. Didn't
Or
put
it's
a
about what
year amount on
I
it.
wanted to say 15 to 20 years, right? Because I don't want to say it wrong, right? Is
No, you were pretty correct. I thought you were
15 to
just being
20
polite.
years. Right, yeah. I was trying to be polite because I didn't want to say 30 and you'll be like, no.
Age him, yeah, it'd be horrible.
He's
I
a
noticed the
20-year vet.
hesitation. It was appreciated. No, it's nice. No, you really do have to think about, and I'm going to get a little bit into the creative aspect of the marketing here, if that's not too,
Please.
not too nuts and bolts, but you have to really think about what each, and this is very much the same as drawing a comic book page. When you're putting together your campaign and you're maybe using graphics for headers or for showing, different things that are part of your campaign, be that covers or extras, what those images look like, you really have to. This kind of gets into some sort of pretty meta stuff, but what does that image say to you as a viewer, especially someone who doesn't know you or know the book? Are you telling them you've got, when your things look more polished, you're telling them, hey, I really had a plan for this. I've thought this out. If your product mock-ups look good, I think that inspires some confidence. Like, hey, this person really cares about how these things look. What you're really saying is that they care about the product you're going to get at the end of this is going to look good. You're expressing a lot of interest in creating these things and making just be as cool and as fun as possible. And your images need to communicate that. That's not just your creative images that are part of the book or your cover art. It's everything else you see. And I think that's something you're kind of trying to do when you create these things, and when you're looking at it through the eyes of a backer. That's something you really need to get into. Are these things fun? Like for what we're looking at now, do they move? How are, like you can have to think about how they're going to look on a phone versus how they look on a laptop screen or a tower. These are all important things, and I don't think any backer looks at that stuff and says to themselves, "Oh wow, they've really thought about how this is going to look on mobile versus a computer." But it does show that you've got your head on straight, that you're concerned about what they see. I think all those things really translate to, hey, this person is going to get me my thing, and it's going to be really cool. That's, I think, the biggest creative message you get from the marketing stuff, as far as just really communicating, hey, I've thought this through. You can have confidence in this project. Not only that it's going to deliver, but it's going to be really fun and really, really something you're happy you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like going into like price points and things of that nature, and kind of it's kind of hard sometimes to do that when you're a creator. You just love these creators so much, and now you're trying to put like a dollar amount to that artwork, right? Because it's like it's artwork is subjective, right? It doesn't have a number to it, and all. So now you're trying to put no number to it, and I feel like that's one of the biggest setbacks to a lot of creators when it comes to kind of setting the price points of these things, because you want to make sure that you tell the consumer that this thing is worth your money, but at the same time we don't want to take all your money because we don't want to steal from you, right? We want to make sure that this is set at an appropriate price point. So how do you do that, right? And you have to kind of be dialed into your market and what you're doing. So and those real things that you actually have to do when it comes to like the business side of things that you really don't want to do sometimes, right? So talk to us a little bit about kind of how you approach those things, CJ, and how you kind of went about setting the price points and setting how Joey set the price points.
Yeah, I think you have to be realistic. For one thing, like in my first campaign, I think I set the physical printed copy at $20 or something like that. Like, it was my first one, and we won't even pull it up. I had 15 backers and I hit 10% of goal. This is 2017, had never even tried it, did it on my own. failed horribly, and I left Kickstarter, until 2023 and just published in the direct market. So that's how horribly it impacted me, because I didn't think about any of that stuff. But I think your price point, it has to be realistic, but it's also okay that price points on Kickstarter are higher than what you're getting in the direct market, right? Like they just have to be. And I think with the extra goodies and the different sort of experience that you get on Kickstarter, there's a way to, make warrant it and let the consumer know, or the comic book fan know, like, hey, you're getting this extra stuff for this. You're getting a full 32-page comic. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but we have some extra things that are included, like the digital copy, that you'll get, and the digital prints and things. But you have to be realistic and thoughtful. I think some people can command higher price points probably than I can, but I don't have a huge fan base on Kickstarter. So I think you have to set what works for you. But it is different than the direct market. This would be I don't know, six to $7 comic in the direct market, for a physical copy. So it's different.
Well, I think
And
that's
feel,
how.
go ahead.
Ben.
I do want to say one thing before I let you speak, Ben. But I feel like the thing that sets the price points differently from the direct market to like Kickstarter is that I don't feel like these covers would be in the direct market, right? Because you could do things differently in Kickstarter that you can't do in the direct market. You can go a little wild with the covers. You can do things that people wouldn't normally do in a direct market cover, and you can market it in Kickstarter and then put a little bit more money on it because it is such a thing that you're not going to be able to see anywhere else but on a crowdfunding space. So I think that
100%.
go ahead, Ben. I want.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what you said there. I think it's two things really have to go into that pricing issue is you really can't escape, when people get to these books on Kickstarter specifically, they're also looking at other books at the same time in other tabs probably. You have to be cognizant, and I think you certainly are, of what those people are seeing as far as price points in other books. You have to be pretty much in line with that. I think there's still probably some back and forth about digital pricing that we're all working out, and that'll probably, I think, stabilize in the next few years is what people kind of want to pay for that sort of thing by itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what you really offer at Kickstarter is it's something between the direct market and social media. I mean, there is a connection there. You're kind of funding the creation of these things when you are backing something on Kickstarter. You get a little bit extra, whether that's whatever kind of extras you're offering on certain different campaigns. You're also getting options to get covers that you won't get anywhere else, and that's a cool thing. But it's a trade-off, and I think that the people who do really well at Kickstarter are people that are like, okay, I can't compete on a direct market printing price with a publisher. It's going to cost me more to print these. What can I give you that's that kind of compensates for that? And some of that's connection with the creator. You can message us on Kickstarter, and we have to get back to you and want to, obviously. But you get other options, you get other stuff, and you also get to be a part of creating it. I think that's the trade-off, and I think that's what you have to really be cognizant of, making sure that equals out in some way. Like, yeah, the DC book you were going to buy is $3.99. This is a little bit more. We have to ship it ourselves. If you kind of keep that in mind, but also say, okay, how can I make that still work out and be fun, be a good purchase?
And a lot of times those DC books, it's like 12 pages of story, like 6 of ads. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's
12 to 15 pages of story. So it's like it's not as much, right? And it's so fast paced, quick paced. So and it's printed on different stock and different kind of interior pages, right? So it's a little bit, so obviously those things, because they can make them a little bit cheaper because they're being printed a little bit and more or less inexpensive, right? So when it comes to doing things like that on a Kickstarter side, a lot of the times you're getting this really nice gorgeous thick cardstock, right? That if you are getting it shipped to you the correct way, it's going to come out it almost every single time to a 9 point something and above, right? And is if the creator's taking care of it, and then you receive it carefully, right? So eh, and so you got to pay for that stuff, right? And you're going to get a better product. So I feel like Kickstarter crowdfunding spaces has become that kind of like premium space to get this really gorgeous looking stuff that you wouldn't normally get things through the direct market, right? So I think that's where kind of we all have to kind of think about it, right? And go through these kind of things. And I think the more that we kind of embrace that, I think the better we will be, especially on a consumer side too, embracing the digital space, right? Embracing you like people offering you like digitals and digital deluxe packages where you get tons of digital things, right? You don't if you're not you don't have a lot of space in your small apartment, your small space to carry all this the physical copies, load yourself up with some digital copies. And so if we're marketing people to the right way, I think there's a space for people to obviously receive it as it comes. So
Yeah,
uh,
100%. And I think that, different, and everybody can view it differently in terms of how they offer it. Like I made some covers limited because it's like, well, I kind of want some things to be just treats for the initial backers and things that I won't publish again, or go to print again on, like the Romboli, not safe for work, or the Paris, not safe for work. It's like I feel like those are one-time treats for people that want like not safe for work content. I'm just going to print, what the limit that I said I would print to on there. So I'm true to my word on that. So if people are like collectors too, I like some things to be collectible. I like some things to be available for everyone forever. And I think some readers like that, where they're like, oh, I definitely want something that's a little bit rare. Like for instance, everybody knows my mentality on Kickstarter versus direct market. I view them as two separate experiences. None of these covers will go into the direct market. I already have a direct market cover that I'm saving should it ever go in. I don't have a deal for the direct market right now, but I have it saved. It's ready.
and I'm telling you guys, he's got literally 20 something covers, and
Yeah, I was
none of
gonna
them
say
are
I've seen so many covers for this that I'm like,
and none of
are
them
they
are
all
going
on
to the
here? Am I
direct
missing
market.
one?
Yeah.
I'm like scrolling down looking for them.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not
And
there.
so I'm
Oh,
always
there's more.
my,
We still haven't released all of them. There's more.
Yeah, I'm true to my word on that. I just did a deal with Band of Bards for another comic that was previously released as a Kickstarter. It will have 2 brand new covers. You will not be able to get those vice versa on the Kickstarter, or vice versa in the direct market. It's direct market specific covers. I do that twofold because I really want to help shops. I don't want shops to get the same experience that I did on the Kickstarter. I feel like for me, they need to have something a little special to make it warrant them to actually purchase a comic that's already been released. And 2, I think it's good marketing for your book. If people really liked it, there might be like, shit, I have all the other covers. I might as well get these other 2 as well that went out in the direct market. So that's how I view it. Some people say, well, shit, why are you getting all these covers? Isn't that more money? Yeah, but like if you put it into your whole marketing plan and your whole production plan, it's not that bad. And also you can negotiate with publishers in the direct market to talk about costs. What are they willing to pay for, etc. So there's ways to actually make that work for you. But I that's a long way of saying is I view them as 2 different experiences, and I don't re-release covers. That's my shtick.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because you've had some experience with multiple books in the direct market, with multiple publishers as well, correct? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about pitching these things, because you've had success pitching a Kickstarter book to direct market. So can you give a little bit of advice on that?
I laugh because now I'm buddies with the Band of Bards guys, so I just kind of DM them. So that's a little disingenuous for me to be like, because it's easy now for me. I'm gonna be completely honest and say it's easy when you have direct relationships with publishers after You've been published. All it takes is the one time.
Yeah.
And if you're easy to work with, if your content is good, if your comic did okay and not, it doesn't have to light up the sales chart or anything, but if it did okay and you're professional and people like to work with you, that door with that publisher opens. And it opens in the sense that pitching becomes pitching light. You're no longer writing up the draft and you're doing all this stuff and you're praying to God that they'll, return your email. You can literally, I email my editor at Antarctic, I email or I DM my editor or the publisher, excuse me, at Band of Bards. And that's how I go about it that way now with them. Now, if I was going to do it with a brand new publisher, it would probably be the whole write-up that you've all seen. It's like you got the synopsis, you got the log line, the character details, sample pages, and all that good stuff. I would basically take a lot of this content if I was going to go to somebody new, like Mad Cave, for instance, who I have not published with. I would just go through the whole rigmarole and do what everybody's used to. But that's why I kind of laugh and say, well, I don't want to like say, well, here's how you do it, because I haven't done it. Converted Kickstarter to direct market in a normal sense. Like I didn't pitch it. Like those guys know me, they know my content, and hopefully I'm easy to work with. And they were just willing to take another chance on me, which I'm appreciative of.
Very cool. I just wanted to let you know you're step lightly, pal. No, just kidding.
I know they're like, don't just say that everybody can DM us. That's not. I'm going to say that's not. You have to have published already. You need to go through the normal channels if you haven't published already. Like once you're in with a publisher, things open up.
You're right. I think and keeping that relationship is the key, right? Because and making sure that relationship does not go stale, because I think it's because the door will stay open as long as you're. I don't want to say anything because I can't say anything now. I can't use the same language that I would have before before like a couple weeks ago, because now I'm part of Band of Bards officially. So I think just keep in a relationship, don't be a jerk, and stay out of discourse. That's all I'm gonna say. Stay away from discourse, stay out of discourse, and stay safe. Just keep your head down and create and make sure you're promoting yourself as much as you possible. You'll be fine. Right. And
100%
pitch.
Yeah, really. It's like just be cool. Just be cool. Right. Be normal. Don't be weird.
Don't be a dick.
Easier said than done for so many people, which I kind of, I laugh again because I'm like, God, so many people step in it and it's their own fault. Like they won't keep their mouth shut. And I've nearly had some issues too, where I was like, oh, I shouldn't have liked that tweet. And maybe I didn't understand the context completely.
I actually have to invoice you from the PR side of things because you stepped in it at one time and I had to. Sorry.
No, and I appreciate that. Buddies need to look out for each other because sometimes context is important and you don't look at things from all sides. And I view myself as a realist and open to conversation. And I can admit when I'm wrong or admit when maybe something wasn't good, right? Or taken out of context. And then, some people just have egos and they're unwilling to have those conversations. Like I could have easily been like, F you, Joey, you don't know what you're talking about. But I listened and I thought Joey made really good points and he helped me. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, we save that drama for the last week of the campaign just to get the numbers up, get the eyes on things. Who are these people fighting? Do they have a
yeah. I don't know. People step in it a lot. And, and I feel like my near, kind of thing that wasn't huge, but it was helpful. Like some people just every week have to have something to talk about, and rather than just talking comics or having fun, like I don't get it.
So
here's a good tip, though. Just draw something. It takes too long, and you won't have time for it.
Right. You listen. You guys have a lot to do, right? Especially if you have your own brand and you have your own franchise that you're kind of creating, right? You guys don't have time to step in it because you guys are gonna have to do these things, right? Because on the business side of things, here's some free tips, guys. This is a kind of the general thing that you kind of want to think about when you're thinking about marketing plans and stuff, right? What's your ultimate goal, right? Is to grow your brand or grow your franchise, grow your brand, which is your comic book, right? You want to gain leads and drive those sales. How do you do that? You do that with your direct to consumer, right? Which is your Kickstarter campaign. You create a campaign that immerses them within your world, right? You keep that going. You get some newsletters out there. You talk to podcasters. You get on live shows like this. You create relationships. You stay relevant in social media. Just don't step in it. And then, right? So you do that, and then you also want to improve your consumer and user kind of interface, as well as your reader consumer retention. And the way you do that is by keeping them engaged, and talking to them, and just being amongst them and doing that stuff, right? And always telling them about your brand and telling them what's new, what's going on, keeping them informed, keeping them the one thing that we like to do, right? Like, let's take a talk about like the Prime shows, like Fallout, right? When Fallout was going on, there was so much cool content out there that you can consume before the show, during, and after the show. Like all these behind the scenes things, all these things. And they even did this pre-launch kind of party that they did that you can do a countdown on, and all kinds of really cool interactive games and stuff that they were doing with it. So that you could think outside the box to kind of retain those things, and so immersing people within the world and keeping them involved with it, it helps them to love it even more, right? Because now that they were, that's an experience, right? They're gonna remember that for a lifetime now, right? So you do those things, right? You kind of want to develop, talk about post and pre-campaign things to create creative campaigns that way, right? Um, and then here's the biggest thing. You're going to want to make sure that you could turn your backers into advocates for you, right? And the way you do that is kind of think about one thing that we did last time with our archetypes campaign, that anybody that retweets you or says, hey, I backed Tiny Island, go check it out. Well, you can now incentivize those people, right? There's all kinds of really cool resources out there where you can kind of create these like reference codes, or these like affiliate codes, and people can get a percentage of different things to kind of pay them out and things of that nature. Or you can kind of run a little deal with them where they get a free sticker. Like one time I did that. I was like, hey, thanks for reposting. If you tell another friend, I'm going to upgrade your stickers to these really cool stickers, right? And then everybody's like, oh, I didn't do a physical, so now I'm going to go from a digital to a physical so that I can get that sticker, because I want to get that free sticker. So things of that nature, right? You're turning them into advocates, and now they're fighting for you and telling other people for you, right? Word of mouth and things of that nature. So that's just a quick, those are some really quick actionable tools that you can use within, and kind of like a broad kind of blanketing kind of thing that you can do with your Kickstarter campaigns. Ben, if you got anything else to kind of toss in there.
No, just one thing to add about that is what Kickstarter is, or what any of the crowdfunding platforms is. Just to dovetail on what you were saying, is this is kind of social. It's not necessarily a social network in the same way Facebook or Twitter or anything like that is, but it kind of is like that. So when you're doing the things you suggest, which I think are like, those are awesome ideas, those are things people need to think about. That's not just like a business transaction. I don't think you suggested it that way at all. But like, yeah, this is like, hey, dude, we are, the way we present ourselves on these platforms, and I think it has to be true if you're on it, is, hey, I have this project that I just need to make happen. I'm incredibly passionate about it. If somebody else responds to that, like, yeah, we should be friends. Like, this is a social network type of interaction in some regards. And so it's not just like a sort of businessy thing. It's like, hey, if you're into this too, like, my comic is like A, B, and C, and you backed it because you're into that stuff too. Like, yeah, you want to connect with those people, not just necessarily sell your comic. You're just like, yeah, this is cool. We like this stuff. Let's talk about it. Let's make more of it happen. And I think that's kind of the id of what your Kickstarter interactions ought to be. Not necessarily for dollars and cents, but just that's what we're doing here. That's why we create this stuff.
Definitely. I definitely agree. Ben, we have a couple of other Kickstarters we want to talk about before we get out of here, right?
We do. We have a few.
All right. Tell us a little bit about the first one.
The first one we have is Smut. which is here on screen now. It's
And then Tiny Island and Smut is doing a crossover right now, guys. If you guys are backing both campaigns, you guys get a free NSFW print of both of the main characters doing something smutty.
Yeah, this one's doing great. I'm seeing this, especially that cover on the left on my timeline all the time. People are obviously responding to it.
Yeah,
So this one looks really cool.
check it out. And the next one,
The next one is Kaijus and Cowboys from our friend Matthew Blair.
definitely check this one out.
Really
I
cool
love
stuff. Some great
I
art
love
here.
the colors, this old school vibe. It's very very cool.
Yeah, definitely. I love that he is doing it on something that looks like newsprint, but
Mhm.
gets you all the vividness. Obviously, you go full white on these word balloons here. Gets you all the vivid colors, all the fun, a little bit of that old school feel. Awesome
Mhm.
to see.
Yeah, yeah. And we got a third one here is this Puff Puff Parrot.
That it is.
There we go. This is from our friend J. Michael Miller. He this one is his 420 inspired book. Follows a let's say if Danny Tanner was prescribed medicinal marijuana, this would be your book. Basically, Henry is a man who's kind of got a fear of breaking the law, and his doctor said you need to chill out a little bit, so we're going to prescribe you some weed. And this is basically a story about going through his life and actually becoming better after he smokes some weed. Some cool homages here. This what we're looking at here is the Chronic homage from it's homage in Dr. Dre's The Chronic cover there. What was really cool is Lane Lloyd did the artwork for this, and then Ben and I kind of worked a little bit on the trade dress for this cover.
I would say I worked on. You did a great. This is why I wanted to scroll down to this, because I thought you did an awesome job with it, and wanted to make sure we highlight. I cleaned up a little bit of some stuff on the artwork. I would like you really went in there and made sure this. When you looked at this, you remembered that album, and you did an awesome job here. It's cool to see.
Yeah, we made sure that we that this looked exactly like that album, so we wanted to make sure that that we kind of gave that tip of the hat. And what a great collab between everybody who had their hands on this thing. It came out really good. Very cool. So if you guys are not backing this, please head on over and do that. He's not asking for much. It's only 14.20. We would have done 420, but this is one of those things, right? We did not want to make this. This is kind of goes back to what we did. Now I'm kind of thinking, should we have done 420 because it was going to be really difficult to get everybody on the internet yesterday. But I feel like this one needs to get blown up here a little bit more. So, um, but what I was saying is it goes back to thinking about your price points, right? So this one's like kind of one of those super niche kind of stories, right? So it's like people are going to be like, well, I don't really smoke weed. This is not really it's not really about that, right? It's about the story, it's about the family, it's about him not wanting to become a better person altogether, right? And he kind of does. And it's that tipping point in his life where Henry realizes that he just needed to kind of just even himself out. And I think that's what it more is about, right? So kind of taking yourself back and kind of thinking differently in a different way. So this was really cool. J. Michael Miller, he's done the Healer's Blade as well. So gorgeous stuff. Very very cool campaign. If you guys are definitely going to want to check this one out. Ben, we got a pre-launch campaign for your stuff going on right now,
We
right?
do. Over on Kickstarter, you can go, and the link is in the description for all our books here. My book is Cobalt Crisis. It's a sequel to Scarlet Twilight, and it's basically if Crisis on Infinite Earths or Secret Wars had happened, but it was in the 1940s. So you've got all that earth-shattering continuity, bursting adventure, but a lot of that Golden Age atmosphere. So if you're into that stuff, head over there and check that out.
Definitely. And over here, we just one thing we before we head out and ask everybody to follow us. We are a official partner with Gemini Mailing Supply, and we would really love if you guys are gonna be making an order. I recently made an order for archetypes, and I used our code, which is Geek Collective 10 at checkout, and I saved myself some money. Getting this thing, like, literally, it probably would have been a couple $100, but it dropped it down to under 200 for me. And holy smokes, I saved a lot of money. I could turn around and use that for some of the swag, or an extra cover for the next time around that I'm going to be using for the next book. So definitely, if you guys are already going to be thinking about ordering mailers and you just don't know where to do it, well, and you need save a little bit of money, well, head on over to Gemini Mailing Supply and use Geek Collective 10 and get 10% off your purchase today. Thank you guys for doing that. And CJ, please let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, I'm at Siege the Hudson on Twitter. Same with Blue Sky. Those are the main two spots that I'm at. I also, under my creative studio, I'm on Instagram with Warn Everyone Comics.
Ben, where can they find you?
You can generally find me on Twitter at Benjamin W. Morse, and on YouTube at the channel you're watching this now. If you do a search for Benjamin Morse, comic book artist, you'll find me there.
And please find me at Joey Galvez 1984, and the best place possible to find everything that we are doing, all the stuff that we are promoting, is on Kickstarter. Just look up Geek Collective, and then I also have one for myself, which is Joey Galvez. So go and follow both of those as well, because we will be doing different campaigns on either of those pages. We just finished one up on my page with archetypes. Like I said, we just ordered the paper goods for all that stuff. We have all the shipping materials to get in. So all we're going to be waiting on is one last article to be finished and edited, and then boom, we're off to the races, guys. So once I'm checking in on that this Monday. So make sure that you guys are checking in on all that good stuff, and we're going to be letting you know when that goes off to the printer. I already had one of my printers ask me when that order was coming in, so we're going to be getting on top of it right now. So thank you guys for being as patient as possible, and we'll see you guys next time. Ben, please, can you play that outro for me, please, sir?
I will. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and CJ, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take it easy, everybody. We will see you next week.